Welcome, YouTubers. I'm going to go back. I know it's 2017 now, but I'm going to go back to the 2016 MLB system results because I'm going to go take a look at the money line and what the VIG was for the money line in MLB 2016, just to get me an estimate going forward, something I'll refer back to. Let me give you a little bit of what I'm trying to do in this video is say, hey, what would happen if I bet both sides of every game for 2016, and I'll have a close approximation of that when I get to the Excel file. But again, money line betting, you could win money if the underdog wins. So if you bet both sides, it's often that you would, anytime the underdog, in other words, a team that has greater than a plus 100, so if they got a plus 150, you're going to win back more money than you lose on the other bet. So you'll end up net positive. However, if the favorite wins, so somebody who's got a negative number, like negative 125, then you'll win less money than you lost on the $1,000 bet on the other side. So you'll lose money when the favorites win. So typically you think more favorites win than underdogs. People tend to get that right, so you'll lose, but it's all proportional. Again, win percentages don't matter when you're doing money lines. You can go back to my Office Pool Champions video back in the day. I know it's my third bullet. I'm jumping around. That was one of the first videos on this channel, just to show you the difference between, straight up who wins money line betting and ATS betting. So again, the second bullet is I'm trying to get the estimate of the VIG out of this, and just to show you what would happen if you bet all these games every side. Now we know the ATS is often paid in minus 110 odds. In other words, you get paid 10/11ths of what you bet, and the other 1/11th goes to the VIG. So in other words, your net win for a $1,000 bet, you would be plus 909, so you get $1,900.09 back. A little bit of change in there. Who cares about it? So basically, if you bet both sides, and one side is almost going to win in the ATS type games unless you push, right? And you get, that's kind of a no tie scenario. So one team wins, and they're both minus 110 odds, and you would basically collect 1909, and you would have put out $2,000, a $1,000 bet on each side. So you'd be losing $91 for those $2,000 worth of bets. So that's kind of a benchmark. Why you don't bet both sides on ATS, it doesn't make any sense. You're pretty much going to lose the VIG. But you can do it on Moneyline. And so I'm also going to take a look at sort of the breakdown, if you see if there's any sweet spots in 2016. Sometimes there are sweet spots. If you take more years, maybe you get a better average. But just to give you an idea where my head is at on this type of stuff. So I can jump out of that. I'm going to jump right into Excel. Now my Excel, I noticed from last year I stopped at game 152, pretty much where my season ended. Made good ROI, made good money, I think, last year on the MLB. But this is a different scenario. So I've got all the games, and this happens to be, San Diego's 152 games, and it goes on and on. And I'm going to put a formula in here, and this formula is kind of a formula for determining the payout, net positive or net negative. I had to embed the 1,000. So basically, here's the line for that game. It was a plus 115, so San Diego was the underdog. You're gonna get more money back. You get $1,150 if you win, or you lose $1,000 if you lose. When they were a favorite, like they were a favorite early on against Arizona, must have had a better pitcher that day, then you're only going to get $676 back if you win, and you lose $1,000 if they lose. So this is what this formula is doing for you. If it's greater than, you got to use the line over 100. So in other words, if the line is positive, it's the line over 100 times the bet amount, which is $1,000 in this case. If not, you need to either take $1,000 and multiply it by 100 divided by the inverse, or just the absolute value of the negative line divided by 100 is the way to do that, and do a division. Either way, that's the formula. That's how you get out to this number, what the payout is, net payout, win or loss. And then I did another one that says, hey, if this is a win, then you get the winner. If it's a loss, you get the loser. That's why this one's minus 1,000. This one's, whoops, didn't want to logically screw that up. This one's 1147, so they won a couple games, lost some games, and it's going to go that way, right? Also out here in this column, I just took the integer of the line divided by 10, and then multiplied it by 10. So in other words, anything 110 to 119 would show up as 110. So you can kind of see we're putting it in buckets here, and that's where I'm going to look for some sweet spots, see if there's any sweet spots in the year. So 115 turns out to be 110, 114 turns out to be 110, minus 148 gets rounded down to minus 150, and et cetera, right? So those are the big important columns, and then I put a 1 in this column. So let me jump to the bottom. So I know I only win 152 games times the number of teams, but it ended up being 4,554, so 4,554 games that I'm betting here, or bets that I'm making. I would have lost almost $90,000, just a tick below 89,000. So that's what the VIG gets paid out. So I did end up you would end up a net loser if you bet both sides of every single game, like you likely do. But this can vary from year to year for sure. In the money line with the MLB, it'll be a lot more steady in ATS picking, but you don't get ATS in baseball very often. So if I take the 90,000 and divide it by the number of bets I made, the number of $1,000 bets, it ends up to be $19.73 loss. So in other words, my VIG was for every $1,000 bet, we were losing $19.73. So that's a lot less than the $91. So that's why in this case, I guess it could be worse than $91. It could be better, but this year, the 2016 year of MLB, it only ended up being just a shade under $20 per bet that you would lose. So the VIG wasn't real high, in general terms. But there's a lot more baseball games than like football games. So if you bet a lot, there's an opportunity to really crank it up. For a $2,000 worth of bets, you just take this number divided by 2, because this was on 1,000. So for $2,000, like a set of bets, assuming you'll win one, lose one. I know you're betting every game here, but let's get back to reality where you'd probably only bet one side. So your average VIG kind of drops there to $9.86, and you could take that $91 I was talking about on the ATS for 1,000 and divide it by for 2,000 worth of bets, it would be $45. So you talk about $45 versus $9.86 in VIG fees. So that's kind of exciting. That's a number that I'll use a little bit maybe going forward. I can always look for more years, but it's a lot less VIG when you're in there. So that's my answer on what you would lose and what the VIG was. I'm going to do a pivot table. I know this is old school Excel. I remember how to do this even. What were my columns? I want that category, which I know I put there. So now I get anywhere, the best odds you got during the year were minus 430-ish, something in the 420s. And 370 was the worst underdog. Not a lot of games at that number. So let me get the, I think it was day W was the net. Oh, I don't want it. Come on. Sum, that's good. Let me put this in. Let me just shrink some decimals here just to get my head around it. So you would have been, if you bet all the super heavy favorites, probably only one game. I don't know. I can get the number of games in there, but you'd be up. If you waited for that to hang around, you'd be up $235. So there are some pockets. Of course, if you bet exclusively the minus 310 equivalents, then you'd be minus $1,600 that year. And some of them are pretty bad out here. Minus 11,000, minus 18,000, minus 17,000, minus 16,000. You'd expect some pockets in there. But it all adds up to minus almost 90,000. So equals sum B54. I need to put a freezer on that. Freeze it at that row. And let me just go backwards here, because this is something I just like to look to do. I mean, we can go through and see the pockets. Let me stop right about there. So if I was just to take people, if I were to bet everybody above a certain number, and that comes into play right about here. That's probably the high point as I'm looking at it. So, So whenever a team went, 210 or better, plus 210 or better, if I bet all those games, this entire set, then I would be plus 15,000. So there's a strategy for you, at least worked on this year. If you got really wiggly, you know, the 230s were no good, the 240s were no good. As a matter of fact, a lot of these 250s, 260s, but definitely anything 210 to 220 would actually get you over $20,000 if you just. I know it's not very exciting to you. It's kind of hard to predict like what the end. These are all end game time covers numbers, but maybe they don't jump at the last second. You could just say okay, because the problem is if they jump to 200, then you know in theory, right? This is how it worked. Can't say that it would work out, but you would. There's definitely a sweet spot right in there, right? This 15,000 is definitely a sweet spot. 15,000 for the aggregate, and if you took these two numbers, 2,200 was actually pretty good too. Those numbers working out for you? Yeah, they got to be working out. 43 to 54. Yep. So let's do the inverse of that. Sometimes I screw myself up, right? B5. If you bet favorites, so this is a lot coming out. I know I'd done my office pool hero, and I said, hey, there's a sweet spot right around +3 if you're a Moneyline player in football, where you can definitely earn some money. You don't need as high of a winning percentage as you do to make money. But they hope that you bet all the other numbers like -5 and stuff like that, and you end up losing net. So this type of thing, if it's really, really high favorites, seems like you got a high right about there. Let me just look a little lower because usually this will go negative. Actually, got another couple highs. Shouldn't have used that one. There we go right there. After that, once you get down to the 250s, you're just piling on debt. I know there's a couple pockets out there like 200. You could win. So same type of thing, selective strategy. There's no guarantee going into the 2016 that this is what will show up. But if you get enough data and you bet that system and you have faith in it, you would have. On this year, you would have been a winner. So it's a way to look at data and segregate it. So there's a couple spots out there, and maybe you can bet everybody who's -290. Of course, these games are likely to be close to the same, but maybe use a little bit different, right? You know, you can't bet both. Well, I guess you could bet both sides, but whatever you want to do. That was my thing, so I just wanted to get out and see what the VIG was. The rough estimated VIG based upon the entire set of games, at least 152 games worth, in 2016 was close to $9 and something per $1,000 bet. All right, thank you.